Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to those of you around the world. Welcome to Trading Rebellion with Trade the Chain and Market Rebellion. My name is Nick Mancini, Senior Research Analyst at Trade the Chain, joined by good friends Monty and CJ, both Senior Research Analysts at Market Rebellion. We are here every Monday and Thursday to break down what's going on in crypto, equities, all of TradeFi, macro, whatever buzzword you can possibly think of right now, we're probably going to cover in the next 30 to 45 minutes. So the big news recently, we're of course going to discuss the NVIDIA earnings situation and the subsequent, I believe, 20 to 30% price boost that it had overnight, minted a lot of money for some and lost a lot for others. Shout out ARK and Kathy for having no NVIDIA in any of their funds. So we're just gonna poke a little fun at that. But
CJ,
we
do you
will get
have
to
a
this. Go ahead,
do you have
Monty.
that CJ, do you have that
Yeah, give
chart?
me a second. Give me a second. I'll pull up the chart of their
Okay.
holdings
Oh, and I'm
over
sorry, I was
time.
not
Yeah.
sharing my screen as I sometimes forget to do. So here is the news. So you have a little bit of rhyme for the reason. We will discuss this chart. We're going to discuss Goldman and JP Morgan and a few others, very high projections for the NVIDIA price, talk about a few other correlated stocks like Microsoft and coordinated AI companies. But the other bit of macro news that we want to kick off, which is why we're possibly seeing some good candles out of both, SPY, the Qs, Bitcoin and Ethereum are very volatile, but, trying to move higher. GDP's second reading came in at 1.3%, which is 0.2% higher than the 1.1% that we got earlier in the year, as well as the fact that jobless claims came in lower than expected. They are up month over month, but lower than expected, which is definitely what analysts want to see for their swing trade. So we'll go ahead and pause it right there because that's obviously, bit of good news there for the macro bulls. And then we've obviously got the biggest, good news of the day is that, tech is tech back is kind of the real question. So let's go ahead and pause there. CJ is really going to dig into the chart for us because he is the traditional market master. But let's kick it off with Monty. What are you thinking this kind of signals for the market? Now, is it the time to start really buying into the AI stocks and catching that wave? Or is this kind of the first wave? Maybe we get sold off and you get some better deals over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that now is not the time to be buying NVIDIA, regardless of the expectations that I've seen put forth from some of the companies you mentioned, like JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley, with projections of like 550.
Yeah,
That would
500, 550, something like that.
that would put this at like a $220 billion market cap, putting it in the top 5 assets. Think about that for a second. Think about NVIDIA is now the 6th largest company in the world
I
after
think over 900 million market cap now, right?
I think it's
Close to they're getting close to $1 trillion.
Yeah. They're closing in on some of the big names like Apple, Microsoft, and others. And think about that for a second. Think about what Apple does. Think about what Meta does. Think about those other big names in tech. Like, they don't necessarily sell you a product. NVIDIA sells a product. They sell a graphics card. Meta makes money via advertisements. That's why they're so big. Amazon, they have AWS. They do sell a lot of products, sure, but their servers are where a large majority of their income comes from. And then any others, like, there's no other comparable stock that's in the top 5 that is selling an actual product. These are all like information companies that hoard information and sell that, pass it on to advertisers. This is really, the first time we've seen a company that genuinely sells like an actual product get into the top 10. I don't think this is sustainable. If you go to the weekly chart or go to the monthly chart of NVIDIA, Nick, because I think that is pretty interesting. Look at that previous run up. That was on the back of crypto running, and people, wanting to use Bitcoin or NVIDIA graphics cards as Bitcoin miners. And, subsequently we saw a large increase in demand. Price spiked. I remember for a while there, it was very hard to actually even get a graphics card. Demand was so high. And the prices of the graphic cards were so high. That had changed until recently. And now we are, this is like a massive cup without a handle, and this thing is breaking out. But for me, I don't think that the price it's currently at is justified by its sales and exactly what it does. Like Meta, to me, it makes sense that they're $1 trillion company. They have significant power when it comes to what we see, what we consume. They are a powerful company. NVIDIA isn't that. NVIDIA is a company that makes processors. If people think that they're going to be the cornerstone of like generalized AI, I'm sorry, but that's not going to be the case. A graphics card, especially a company that like I like NVIDIA a lot, but their 40 series line has been a huge disappointment. Their 30 series cards are better. So like their product improvement hasn't gotten any better. That leads me to believe that this is like purely speculative. People are hyping this up, intertwining it far too much with AI. And because of that, we're seeing this irrational price action. But, I'm not eager to short this either, because one thing that is always true is that the market can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. And I'm not trying to play that game. So the fact of the matter is this thing could keep running. I'm not buying it now, because just think about the other big names that are worth $1 trillion and the sort of power that they broker. That NVIDIA is not that. And like when you see that sort of discrepancy in valuation from like a big, like a wider term, like, or bigger picture perspective, it makes me think that this one's going to pull back over time. So incredible pump, but yeah, that's what I'm seeing.
A lot of the pump is coming from two things. One, the fact that they absolutely crushed earnings. I don't have the exact stats, but it was a lot higher than expected. But I think
they beat on the top 18%. So
18%, which is pretty huge.
The bottom 10%. So yeah, I mean, pretty big, but
and had about a 30% boost overnight, which is likely due to their very rosy guidance for the rest of 2023. Now, I think a lot of that is going to obviously be priced in. Therefore, kind of taking Monty into context, is all of this is based on forward guidance for the next 2 quarters, right? So if this is bullish on this quarter, then what you're probably going to see is, holding off for another, couple of weeks or months. Maybe it goes a little bit higher. Maybe it returns back to 30-20, something like that. But it's based on forward guidance. So if that forward guidance doesn't hit, or NVIDIA or something in the macro indicates that forward guidance may not come close or hit the target that it wants, you're going to see prices sell off. So this is based on a very rosy crystal ball outlook, which very well could come based on, these financial analysts who work for these companies are very good at their jobs, and they know future stock price performance depends on their predictability and their transparency and what they can do based on what they say they will do. So that's something to watch out for. So if you basically think that NVIDIA's analysts are BSing and they're not going to hit those goals heading into Q3, probably a good time to buy puts. If you do believe so, then it's probably a good time to just be patient, wait for a couple days, couple weeks, and then, buy calls or puts based on whatever the macro situation is. One thing I did discover here, which, this is never something of how you should trade, but I do find patterns interesting, especially in a rule of 3 format. The boosts, the historical multi-year boosts in price are very similar in terms of the daily count. So peak to trough, 1,064 days, peak to trough back from 15 to 18 was 1,218 days. So relatively close in terms of time frame. And if we were to match that same thing up here, you've basically got a bull run into 2025 for NVIDIA if they continue to hit their numbers. So not saying that will happen, but kind of what Monty and I were kind of chopping up back and forth is if they hit their numbers, could go up to 500 into 2024, 2025, but very dependent on those numbers. And a lot of that, that prediction is very much priced in my opinion. So Monty, go ahead, and then CJ.
Yeah. Could you throw up my screen real quick? Because I just want to make this point. This is AMD. AMD is the most correlated company to NVIDIA. They're competitors. They ostensibly make the same thing. They both make actually AMD makes processors and graphics processors, not just like CPUs. They make GPUs as well. But look at what happened on, like, for me, the fact that people are saying that the reason why NVIDIA pumped 30% after hours is because they beat earnings by 18%. I think that's BS. Look at AMD. It beat on both the top and bottom line. Yeah, it wasn't to the same extent, but on the following day, it opened down significantly. So to say that, and that was because the CEO, Lisa Su, didn't paint a rosy picture for the future. When she very well could have said, like, she could have seized the same advantage that the NVIDIA CEO took advantage of yesterday and talked about how they are, going to be important going forward in the AI revolution. That was a missed opportunity, but, obviously since then they've rallied alongside NVIDIA and have kind of benefited, in the same way that NVIDIA has. So clearly it's not just the earnings that are driving price, right? Like, this would have happened regardless of whether or not earnings were negative or positive, in my opinion. I think that it just comes down to the fact that they painted such a rosy picture, like you said, going forward, and how it's going to be so integral in AI. I don't buy any of that for a second. I don't think NVIDIA is going to be that important to AI. I don't think companies that are building like truly the future of AI are using NVIDIA graphics cards. That sounds ridiculous to me, but at the same time, like I said earlier, the market.
Well, is NVIDIA like the new Zoom, where it's like everybody's moving to Zoom for work to home or for work from home, but we saw what happened to Zoom after the whole, after the party ended. So
yeah, I would say the party's coming to an end for NVIDIA. I mean, sure, it can go higher because people will probably try and short it and get squeezed out and forced to cover their puts, and this thing will keep going higher. But just I can't confidently buy either AMD or NVIDIA at these current levels, just given the fact that so much of it is pinned on future integration into like the AI revolution, and I don't buy that narrative. So for me, I'm not touching these stocks, not shorting them yet, but if the opportunity arises, you guys know what I look for in terms of shorting opportunities, but just can't justify these prices.
Maybe a good short opportunity presents itself when The Economist puts NVIDIA on the front cover. CJ, I know you'll be watching for those headlines, so I'd love to hear what your thoughts are in relation to both the what Monty and I discussed, as well as price action and any other similar assets that you think may move with or against NVIDIA.
It's funny you mentioned that, because The Economist did publish a magazine about a month ago called The AI Revolution. So if you assume that NVIDIA is just really going up because of AI, then yeah, that magazine cover has already been published, interestingly enough. But
just wait till the CEO is on the front cover as the leader of the AI revolution. Then I'm probably stacking a few shorts, I think.
I wonder what the price of Bitcoin was the first time when Forbes put CZ on the cover, when he's in the hood and he's going like this.
Yeah,
well, let's look it up. I can probably look that up while you do while you go through your analysis.
Yeah, I just wanted to show this poll real quick. If you could bring my thing up.
Oh yes, sir. Bringing your chart up.
I mean, this is just an anecdotal thing that I saw on one of the popular like CNBC derivative YouTube channels, and you can see the question in the right-hand side that says, "Would you buy Nvidia here?" And nobody wants to, and the majority knows nothing. They suck at trading, and they're often wrong. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a good time to buy either. I mean, I don't know, right? But the majority is often wrong. And, you could see historic instances where companies like Amazon, we saw a crazy price action and nobody bought that stock because they were calling it a bubble. It's a very similar thing happened with Tesla. Everybody's saying this is just a car company. Why is it valued at X billion dollars? It's like, well, actually, it's more revolutionary than just a car company, and the competition that was going to come never did. Now, I don't know if Nvidia is going to be that winner or as influential as those two prior companies. Being said, the majority is still like just incompetent when it comes to these things. So we could definitely go higher, right? I'm not going to trade it, but I think there's a little bit more nuanced discussion to have other than just saying, oh, this shouldn't be the sixth most valuable company in the world. It's like, well, that's irrelevant to the market. Just as Dogecoin going to $80 billion was.
So
Market's
you're going to say
do what it's going to do. It's not going to follow logic. Maybe in the long term.
You're going to tell me when I yell at my computer for the stock price to go down, that doesn't affect the price or anything? Because I do that a lot.
You do that a lot. You should try breaking. Should try breaking monitors. I hear that's a bit more correlative and effective. But
really quickly, just to hop in with that economist thought. So it was February 28th, 2018 was when CZ was on the cover with the title "Crypto's Secret Billionaire Club." This white arrow was the day that that report came out. So you would have definitely had a little bit of pain for about half a week, but it definitely would have been very profitable into the latter half of 2018. So the Forbes and Economist posters are very much undefeated when it comes
I got another one.
Tech price action.
I got another one from this week from Barron's. If you want to pull up my thing real quick.
Okay, yeah. Well, you disappeared. Sometimes when you pull it off,
my bad.
Remove it. So. But so just while we wait, we will be patiently waiting for the specific company call out for the AI revolution. It could be OpenAI, which we cannot short yet, but there will always be proxies. Go ahead. So what's up with this one, CJ?
So oil has been maybe not talked about that much, but it seems like people are kind of a similar vibe to natural gas earlier in the year when people were like, this has gone down so much, it has to go up and have some type of reaction rally. Looking at energy, the commodity super cycle, 10 picks to play on energy sector that's back on track. So, I think if I go to like CL or some other oil names, like for instance, let's see, heating oil has been down, in the following week, basically. And then oil's had the largest decline, 1 day decline in, since the start of the week when we were basically, right up here near the highs. So just something to keep an eye on in terms of like crude oil as well as heating oil, because so far these things have just continued to go down at kind of our recent local top when we saw this come out. So very interesting. And those are always things that I like to look at in terms of like anecdotally, like anecdotal indicators are very, very accurate, I think, or not accurate, but helpful.
Yeah, and speaking of anecdotal indicators, just to kind of before we dig into the crypto, and just so everybody knows, we are going to have a bit of a slightly shorter session today. We'll stop around the 45 minute mark instead of the full hour. So if you do have questions or want any charts to be mentioned, please throw that in the chat or comment on Twitter. We'll do our best to explain those for you, whatever you want to see. Please no more prison industrial stocks, we will do it, but definitely not our specialty. So, but CJ wanted to continue the NVIDIA discussion, maybe not about directly NVIDIA. Is there any other stocks you're looking at potentially from a long or short opportunity in relation to this play? There's a couple of crypto plays that we're definitely going to mention. Render's one of them. I know a lot of people have been asking about that in our community and in my network, but I know Microsoft's C3 AI, potentially Apple, with obviously they're going to do something with AI. So are there any other satellite plays around NVIDIA, whether it's long or short, that you're looking at, CJ?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I've been looking at a lot of those tech stocks. Started off short earlier in the week and then kind of just closed some stuff.
Maybe we start with NQ. Maybe let's start with the Qs, because they're still at those local highs, and then we can kind of, if there's anything else that pops up.
Yeah, for sure. Let's just bring up my chart and let's start us there. So yeah, looking at NASDAQ, I mean, new highs, continuing to see a lot of longs. One thing that we had mentioned at the start of last week is that we do see speculators getting very long, in fact, for one of the first times in quite a while in terms of NASDAQ. So this was actually something we looked for, like on the way to a potential top. I don't know if we're there yet. It's hard to say. I haven't had a proper news failure to really get short Qs or the NASDAQ specifically. Something that we said on Monday that's still in play is the debt ceiling talks. What are those, like June 6th or June 5th?
The X date, as Yellen's been saying, is June 1st, but the analysts have been calling her out and saying it could be second or third week of June.
Yeah, either way, that could be an interesting event for a news failure. Say we have bullish news, but NASDAQ is unable to close higher. It closes down. Maybe that's a time where I would think about getting short.
When you say close higher, close down, do you mean in reference to that high from July, or do you mean like the next like macro high?
It doesn't really matter. I would say that, like, when you're talking about a news failure, like the word despite, if you ever hear the word despite, that's like very important. My ears always pick up or perk up when I hear those like phrase, because that's what a news failure is. It's like, yesterday, British pound closed lower despite inflation coming in higher than expected. Typically, when you see, the inflation numbers come in and they're higher for a particular currency, like they did with pound yesterday, price initially spiked a little bit. It was positive on the day, but that positive news wasn't enough to keep price at that level. And as you can see, we kind of dumped lower. So to me, even though we weren't at the top of an uptrend, that's a news failure. It's news that should have been bullish, but the market was so weak it was unable to rally and maintain that level. And for me, that's a great indication to put a position on, and what I really look for as like a catalyst. And so that was my catalyst to short British pound yesterday. And so, we had a similar thing in gold, going back to our previous CPI. CPI came in, I think it was lower than expected. And we actually closed lower in gold a few weeks back. That was a news failure. So it doesn't necessarily have to be at the top or the bottom. It can be in the middle. It's just like that keyword despite. If you ever hear that, you got to pay attention to it.
And so just to kind of bring in a little bit of context before I pull back to your charts, is one thing we didn't mention in relation to the macro and talking about possible news stories that could impact price action based on what CJ is explaining, is we have PCE index tomorrow. And of course, the Fed will be focusing a lot more on core, as will the market, because we're trying to follow what Fed actions may take place, but we're expected to have core come in flat. And it looks like, we don't have the exact predicted amount for PCE, but I wouldn't expect that to be coming down too much with the core coming in flat. So let's say we get a good PCE tomorrow, and let's kind of bring up all of our faces. Let's say we get, a 4.5 PCE, but, we get that spike that you mentioned, and then things start selling off. Would that be kind of an indication of, a good opportunity in relation to this strategy that you're mentioning? inflation's coming down, we should be bullish, but maybe things sell off because we already boosted. We already kind of got our green candles from the Nvidia announcement. Is this kind of the scenario that you may be discussing, or is this a little bit off the mark?
No, I would agree, and I would say that's a pretty quality observation to make there. And as you can see, like the urgency, like you can see USD there, prelim GDP and how it's highlighted in red. They make it easy for you. So to like pay attention to this idiot. It's important. Yeah, that could be an interesting news failure and something that I'll watch for. I think personally that since people have been paying attention to the debt ceiling, there was a massive move in the dollar and in gold and currencies following those initial claims. So perhaps that event carries more weight just because it has previously. But if the market runs out of, if it has another bullish catalyst, like let's say, for instance, cutting rates.
Dollar's been cranking. Dollar's up 3% in May.
Yeah, so much for the de-dollarization. And, you knew it was over once how to buy gold searches on Google peaked. Like
it literally that headline hit of who Druckenmiller was short the dollar. Like you didn't think he had a bunch of freaking hedges when that news story came out. Like, come on. I wouldn't be surprised if he's out of the trade altogether.
Yeah, that was exactly what he said. He said he's short US dollar and long NVIDIA. And he said, please do not go and replicate these positions. I could change my mind next week. And perhaps he did. Perhaps he didn't. Perhaps he's looking at this more from a 3-year type perspective. Either way, it's one person. It is what it is. But what should we hit at next?
I think before we dig into crypto, if we talked about NASDAQ, if you don't have any automatic, and I'm not, you don't always have to, but if there's nothing related to Nvidia and in which you think is a good or bad trade opportunity, then we'll just move over to crypto. But I just figured everybody's like, oh my God, I missed Nvidia yesterday. Everybody bought calls and they're up, 10,000%. What do I do? Monty and I suggested, best to be patient. I figured CJ would more than likely agree, but I think you track the traditional market a little bit more closely than Monty and I do. So
I would say Monty's probably trades the most in terms of tech options. But the one thing that I have taken a look at, and I'm I think I made one of the mistakes, at least in crypto, this bear market, and the one I don't want to repeat in stocks, is the infatuation people have with shorting strong stocks. Kind of reminds me of how people wanted to short Tesla and short Dogecoin in 2021, when you're probably better off and have a much higher probability of shorting a stock that's already pretty weak. One that comes to mind that really hasn't rallied with things like AMD and NVIDIA and other tech names. I know Intel doesn't sell graphics cards, but at the same point, I feel like that should have some beta correlated to that sector, and it's absolutely tanking today.
And at what point does AWS get something from this? They run, the distributed software. All of crypto runs on AWS. Pretty much every startup runs on AWS, and everybody's funding AI startups. So, does AWS get a bunch of compute and storage and database usage for this AI revolution? Do they start offering? Do they pivot and start offering some sort of AI based technology to their clients? I feel like there's so many different companies that you can be like, well, when are they going to do AI, or what are they going to do with AI? So I feel like we'll probably be talking about this, throughout many shows into the summer.
It drives me crazy because it is a bit of an arms race here between these companies to create, what would truly be a generalized artificial intelligence. ChatGPT has certainly sparked everyone's imagination as to what is possible with AI. And I think that's the reason why NVIDIA, if ChatGPT didn't pop off this year, NVIDIA stock would still be where it was at. It wouldn't have spiked as much as it did, not even close. This year has been defined by, it's been the year of AI speculation. And quite frankly, I don't think Nvidia has what it takes. Sure, they may be a small player in it, but what's required to make a true generalized AI is massive amounts of information. That's why I think it's got to be Google, it's got to be Meta, it's got to be Apple, or it's got to be Amazon. 4 companies that are super well positioned. And even though Nvidia has completely outperformed them, I think all 4 of those are far more important in the future of AI than Nvidia will ever be. So it's because they have so much information, and creating a truly generalized AI, like we're talking about something that is conscious, is thinking, able to think for itself rather than just pull down data from the internet. That requires such a vast amount of information that is only available to a few companies like Amazon, Google, Apple, Facebook, or Meta. So those are the 4 that I think we'll can keep running on the back of this narrative, because really what it comes down to, it's not about processing power. That's not what's gonna push on the next AI revolution. It's information. It's
Training. It's because that's how
yeah,
you train the AI.
yeah, and without and if you've seen the movie Ex Machina, you'll know that
I was waiting for one of those references.
yeah, right. Like that's the guy has a company called Blue Book, which is essentially Google, and he uses all of the data to create all of the human queries, all the search engines, everything anyone's ever typed in, to create essentially like a unique human mind. And we're still years off from that. And NVIDIA's role in that is still completely unclear. So to speculate that, like, to see it pop 30% after hours, I thought was just absolutely ridiculous. The fact that it's up there in the top 10 is absolutely ridiculous. I don't think it has a large role in the future of AI, but I think that companies like Amazon, Apple, Meta, and Microsoft do most certainly have the potential to, create that sort of tech.
Definitely definitely an interesting narrative. We'll have to see where the speculation leads. I definitely am, and more so in Monty's camp, but we also cannot discount the frenzy, the retail frenzy that can follow from headlines, and activity on the markets like today. So, and again, we can remain. What's the phrase, Monty? We can remain insolvent longer than say it
The
again.
market,
I
the
always
market
forget it.
can remain irrational longer than we can remain solvent, which
Yeah,
is
and
very true.
certainly the case. So I definitely don't recommend buying right now. Definitely don't recommend diving into shorts. After a parabolic move, always your best bet, no matter what market you're playing in, is if you do not want to buy and clench your cheeks to ride the roller coaster, just be patient and wait for the next likely move. So we only have about 10, 15 more minutes left. So we're going to dig into crypto. CJ, I saw you had the Bitcoin chart up before. Do you want to kind of kick things off with what your thoughts are around Bitcoin? I know the critical level that we've been hovering around is that 26.6, 26.5, depending on exactly how you're charting it. But we did dip below that level, and we have been below that level, I believe, for nearly a couple of days now. I'm pulling up my chart just so I can have a little bit of context as well. So we're into day 2, dipping below 26.5 yet again, and we're obviously tapping at the door for possible deviation of the range. So would love to know what you're looking at, CJ, from the perspective, because I think this is a big position where people are either like, I'm going to try and short this down to 25K, or I'm going to try and ride this back up into the 27s for potentially a mean reversion play. It's really your kind of 2 thoughts right now. I wouldn't recommend diving into either until you see a critical level broken, i.e. 26.6 or 25.8, but people are making bets. So what are you looking at, CJ, and what is your thought process around current price action?
Yeah, I mean, I don't scalp or anything. I don't like day trade. I think it's a good way to really lose your mind and go on tilt. But some can do it, right? Some can do it. Not for me personally, though. And the reason why I really don't want to pay that much attention to Bitcoin and why I think it's been really lame lately, I think honestly taking a long in Nvidia today is a better better probability and better risk reward than longing something like Bitcoin, because um, Bitcoin's just completely uninteresting to me. Like if you have the Nasdaq going up, like 2%, having its best day in the past, 2 months or so, and all Bitcoin can do is like basically be flat on the day. You still have a lot of altcoins, risk off. So it just reminds me very similar of this period of time in 2019 where we finished the echo bubble. Volatility is declining and we're basically just waiting for kind of the flush. Then I think comes the natural retest of resistance. That should be like a retest of 26 or 27K, like if we go to 25, for instance, and then maybe just a slow bleed, down to our previous low at like, 20K and make the double bottom and then potentially go up. But overall, that's kind of how I've viewed, the market cycle. This 2019 playbook has worked really well when applying it to 2023. So I'm just kind of remaining with that until proven otherwise. And the last point I'll make on this in terms of volatility is, Bitcoin.
Is that a volatility indicator that you have on the bottom?
Yeah, this is a Bollinger Bandwidth indicator. So, Bollinger Bands, they measure volatility and the distance between the bands. When you get a lot of distance between the bands, therefore that's reflection of increased volatility. So that's just plotting the distance of the bands. So, when we get spikes, that's an indication of very high volatility. So on the uptrend, when Bitcoin's trending up and making these parabolic moves, you're going to have these nice spikes in volatility. And that's like what's a really good opportunity and condition to be long is when we have lots of volatility. When we're kind of just in a lull and no longer have that, in my opinion, I think the next large spike in volatility, and if we go to our current price, you can see that, very similar thing happened. We were riding these speculative trends and volatility as prices going up, but now we've like basically lost that. And if we don't hold this 26K level, then I just see us going lower, very similar to 2019 and that whole playbook. So I'm trying to keep things very simple. It's tough to get a read on crypto here, especially with like Qs going super risk on. Like you'd expect more from Bitcoin.
That's what I was about to say, CJ, is like apply your favorite word, that makes your ears perk up. Despite the fact that we're getting the Qs and all these tech companies running up, Bitcoin is as boring as ever. So that is, not narrative failures aren't just important, correlation failures too, worth noting.
100% agreed. I will be the first to admit that Bitcoin has been boring. And I actually was telling Monty and CJ that I've switched my strategy to really only scalping during US hours and sometimes during Asia hours, because swings right now are just, it's impossible. If you're trading on Monday, predicting what's going to happen Friday, you could hit your targets and hit your entry 10 times in between that and in that cycle. And that's not really good for multi-day trade. So if you are trading the, top crypto assets, I would suggest getting in and getting out relatively quickly, at least for just the current term. But let's bring up an asset, and that's the wrong asset. Let's bring up Render, because this has been a really hotly talked about coin. And I think it may be giving us, and CJ may find this juicy, another short opportunity here. Now, the reason NVIDIA, I think, was running so hard was because of the potential correlation, the reason Render was running so hard is because of the potential correlation with NVIDIA. Now, I don't think Render is an exact replica of NVIDIA on the blockchain, but the idea is that, people are going to require more render capabilities with AI coming up, and text to video and voice to video and voice and text to everything. You're going to need rendering, and you need to purchase Render to get access to their decentralized rendering situation. So this was a big short opportunity for a lot of people. We actually discussed this previously as possibly a good short opportunity, but of course, probably not the best idea heading into NVIDIA earnings. So the earnings are done, and we basically we didn't get a perfect sweep, but we got a near sweep of the local highs, and we have a pretty beautiful 4-hour doji with a continuation candle following. So in my opinion, I think if you're trying to long render here, maybe not the best bet, but we could certainly see, I think, maybe a final sweep of these highs before heading lower. But I think the best shorts in the book would be if we get below this 257 level again. I do not think it'll probably survive that. So this will kind of be the last coin we talk about. But what are you guys thinking, CJ or Monty? And please let me know if you want me to pull your chart up.
Monty, if you don't mind, I'd love to take this one since I was stopped out of it recently.
Go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, and so, yeah, if you want me to pull your chart up, please let me know.
It's okay. This is fine. So yeah, caught this initially and did quite well, but then just was stopped out. Break even, rather uneventful popcorn trade where it just goes up and down and you make nothing and have just wasted emotions. But I digress. The reason and the primary mistake I made when shorting this one was the same mistake I was talking about earlier of like people having this infatuation with trying to short strong stocks. Probably better off picking something weak like Chainlink or Uniswap to short. However, the reason why I wouldn't short this today is because it has kind of remote event risk from the short side. And that comes from the worldwide developer conference that Apple is holding on June 5th, I believe. So I'm thinking about this whole trade very similar to how Chili's ran into the World Cup. There was some anticipation of, I think Socios had like, sponsorships on, the World Cup. Anyways, if there is some type of rhetoric around AI or render, then that's probably when you will see a peak, just as how Chili's peaked on the first day of the World Cup. So I think that, that could be a very interesting news failure. And June 5th is definitely a date I would pay attention to if you're trading render, because it seems to be pumping into that event.
There you go. So, very much kind of relates to the definite or to the possible idea of, one more sweep up near the highs before we start to really come back. We did see similar price action here, spike up, sweep, drop, spike up, sweep, drop, and then, finally kind of came back to the bottom of the range. So if we do get this deviation here, I'll definitely be looking for shorts, but I do agree with CJ. Definitely do not just dive in the day after the news carries, because the AI news is a little bit special right now, just in terms of the strength and the narrative that we have right now. So would not short that just yet. So we are going to go ahead and wrap it up here. I did, throw up the banner. If you guys want to join Market Rebellion, head over to marketrebellion.com/trycrypto. I believe it's only $1 to go ahead and get started. And another complimentary product is Trade the Chain, 14-day free trial. Both of these companies will assist with your trading acumen in relation to crypto and equities. And of course, I am with Trade the Chain, CJ and Monty with amazing Market Rebellion. So good luck. Happy trading. We will see everybody on Monday.